Part 1. The meeting chamber on Viridia Prime hung in silence, a great dome of polished alloy and soft blue light suspended above the swirling clouds of the planet below. Around the circular table sat representatives from 23 star systems, their faces unreadable behind masks of protocol and pride. At the far end, alone in his seat, sat Eli Vance. He was human, and he knew it made him an oddity here. His dark hair was streaked with gray, his hands steady, his voice usually calm. But today there was a tension in his shoulders that even the finest Vorthan observers could not miss. For 10 years, Eli had served as Earth's voice in the Galactic Concord. He had learned their customs, spoken their languages, and tried, often in vain, to explain humanity to beings who saw them as little more than clever animals with fast ships and loud weapons. Now he had come to deliver a warning. Not a threat, a warning. The Kessel Belt outpost is not a military base, Eli said, his voice low but clear. It is a mining station. The people there are geologists, engineers, cooks, medics. They are not soldiers. They dig for minerals to trade, not to build weapons. High Commander Rael of the Vorthan hegemony leaned forward, his scaled brow furrowed. His voice was like grinding stone. And yet they move closer to our borders every cycle. They scan our systems. They listen. They listen because you watch them, Eli replied. Because your patrols fly within 100 kilometers of their habitat modules. Because last month, one of your scouts fired a warning shot near their supply shuttle. Humans do not forget that. A murmur passed through the chamber. Some delegates shifted. Others stared at their data slates, pretending disinterest. But Eli saw the doubt in their eyes, or the lack of it. Most of them simply did not care. You speak as if humans are some ancient power, said Lyra Voss, the Keldari envoy, her voice smooth and dismissive. They have been part of this concord for less than 30 standard years. Their technology is crude. Their society is fractured. They argue among themselves more than they speak to us. Eli took a slow breath. That may be true. But when they stop arguing, when they agree on one thing, they become something else entirely. Something you have not seen? He paused, letting the word settle. Then he told them a story. 200 years ago on Earth, there was a war. Not between planets, but between nations on the same world. One side had more soldiers, more factories, more weapons. They believed victory was certain. But the other side, the smaller one, refused to surrender. They used every tool they had. Old trucks became bomb carriers. Radios were rewired into traps. Farmers became snipers. And in the end, the stronger side lost, not because they were weaker, but because the other side would not stop. They hunted them in the forests, in the cities, in the dark. They never gave up, Rael scoffed. That was primitive ground combat. We speak of starships, energy grids, quantum shields. Your history is dust. Dust that built the ships now orbiting Mars and Titan, Eli said quietly. Dust that designed the drive that got us here. Humans learn fast, and when they are hurt, they remember. He looked around the table. If you attack that outpost, you will not be striking a threat. You will be lighting a fuse. And once it burns, you will not be able to put it out. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Rael stood. His armor clinked softly. The hegemony will not allow unchecked human expansion near our core systems. We have tolerated their presence long enough. A show of strength is required, not cruelty but clarity. One strike, one message. They will understand their place. Eli's stomach tightened. They will not see it as a message. They will see it as murder. Semantics, Rael said, waving a clawed hand. The vote is called. The Concord's voting system was swift. Each delegate entered their choice into a small console. Lights blinked green or red. Within minutes, the result appeared on the central holo display. 22 in favor, 1 opposed. Eli had cast the lone no. The decision was made. A fleet of 3 Vorthon cruisers would depart within the hour. Their target, Outpost Theta 7 in the Kessel Belt. Objective, disable all operations, destroy communication arrays, and leave no survivors. To ensure the message is received, Rael explained. Eli did not argue further. He knew it was useless. Instead, he returned to his quarters, a small room with a view of the stars. He sat at his desk and opened a secure channel to Earth. The connection flickered, then stabilized. A tired face appeared. Admiral Nate Brooks, his eyes sharp beneath a furrowed brow. They're going to hit Theta 7, Eli said without greeting. Brooks didn't flinch. When? Within 12 hours. A long silence. Then Brooks nodded once. We heard rumors. Didn't think they'd be stupid enough to go through with it. They think it's a lesson, Eli said. They don't understand what it really is. Brooks leaned closer to the screen. What should we do? Nothing, Eli said. Not yet. Let them make their mistake. But get ready. Once it happens, everything changes. He ended the call and stared out the viewport. Far below, Viridia Prime's oceans shimmered under twin suns. It was peaceful. Quiet. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. Hours later, news arrived. Outpost Theta 7 was gone. All 212 souls aboard, men and women who had signed up for a job, not a war, were dead. No warning, no chance to surrender. Just fire from the sky and silence after. Among the lost was Lena Cruz. Eli had met her once, years ago, at a science symposium on Luna. She had spoken about crystal lattices and asteroid ore with the same passion others reserved for poetry. Her last transmission, recovered by a drifting probe, played over the Concorde's emergency channels. Her voice was steady, almost calm. Unidentified vessels approaching. No response to hails. Activating emergency beacon. If anyone hears this, tell my brother I... Then static Eli listened to it 3 times. Each time his hands clenched tighter. On Luna Command, Nate Brooks received the same recording. He played it once, then stood and walked to the observation deck. Earth hung in the blackness, blue and white and fragile. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He simply turned to his aide and said, "Scramble the network. Full blackout. All ships. All stations. Silence Protocol Alpha." Within minutes, every human vessel within 10 light-years powered down non-essential systems. Transponders went dark. Comms fell silent. Even civilian freighters stopped broadcasting. The human presence in space seemed to vanish overnight. The Concorde noticed. At first, they thought it was fear. Then confusion. Then worry. But Eli knew the truth. It wasn't fear. It was focus. The humans were not running. They were preparing. And somewhere in the quiet dark between stars, the hunt had already begun. Part 2. The silence from human space lasted longer than anyone expected. At first, the Vorthon hegemony celebrated. Their strike on Outpost Theta 7 had been clean, precise, and, according to their reports, successful. The humans had vanished from the comms, their ships gone dark, their colonies quiet. High Commander Rail declared it a victory. They understand their place now, he told the Concorde Council. They will not test us again, but Eli Vance knew better. He watched the data streams from his restricted quarters on Viridia Prime, his access limited but not gone. He saw what others missed. Human freighters that used to chatter across trade lanes were now ghost ships. No signals, no transponder codes, no routine check-ins. Mining drones near the asteroid belts operated on preset paths, but no new commands came from Earth. Even the weather satellites around Mars stopped sending updates. It was not the silence of surrender. It was the silence of someone holding their breath. On Luna Command, Admiral Nate Brooks stood in the central war room, surrounded by dim screens and hushed voices. No lights flashed. No alarms blared. The room felt like a tomb, but every person in it moved with quiet purpose. Orders were given in whispers. Maps were updated by hand. Everything digital had been taken offline, replaced by paper charts and coded notepads. Earth's entire defense network had gone analog, not out of fear, but strategy. "They think we're hiding," Nate said to his second-in-command, a woman named Mara Finch. She had once flown crop dusters over Nebraska wheat fields. Now she flew stealth corvettes through dead zones in space. "But we're not hiding. We're watching," Mara nodded. Her eyes were tired but sharp. "They'll get careless. They always do," and they did. Within 3 weeks, Vorthon patrols began stretching farther into the border zones. Confident the humans were broken. Their ships flew with lights on, comms open, routes predictable. They even started broadcasting victory songs on open channels. Boastful, rhythmic chants about Vorthon's strength and human weakness. That was their first mistake. It happened near the Gali system. A Vorthon supply frigate, the Korvax, was making a routine run to a forward depot. Its crew was relaxed. 2 of them were playing a dice game in the mess hall. The ship's sensors were set to passive mode. No active scans, just listening. They never saw the swarm coming. From the shadow of a dead comet, hundreds of tiny drones detached from a cloaked human freighter. They were no bigger than a hand, built from scrap metal and old circuit boards in a workshop outside Boise. Each carried a small charge and a simple AI that knew only one task: find coolant lines. The drones latched onto the Korvax like insects, drilling through weak seals near the engine vents. Within minutes, the ship's thermal regulation failed. Alarm. Ms. blared too late. The crew scrambled, but the heat rose fast. Systems melted. Hull integrity cracked. The Korvax didn't explode, it simply went dark, drifting like a dead fish in the void. No human ship was seen. No signal was sent, only a single audio file looping on the emergency frequency. You were warned. The Conquered was stunned. Rail called it sabotage, a coward's act. But fear crept into his voice. He ordered double patrols, tighter formations, encrypted comms, yet the disappearances continued. A scout ship vanished near Series 9. A relay station stopped responding. Then a full battle cruiser, the Drenok, failed to check in after a routine sweep. Its last transmission showed static, then a brief image. A human symbol, simple and stark, painted on a piece of wreckage. A fist inside a circle. The old Earth sign for "We're still here." Back on Earth, in a garage-turned-lab in Portland, a young engineer named Kyle Dawson worked through the night. His team had captured a piece of Vorthan tech from a disabled drone, a navigation core. In 72 hours, they reverse-engineered it, not to copy it, but to break it. They built a pulse emitter that could scramble Vorthan jump drives mid-transit. It wasn't powerful enough to destroy a ship, but it could yank it out of warp and leave it stranded, blind, and vulnerable. Kyle called it the tripwire. The military loved it. Meanwhile, on the moon colony of Tycho Base, a schoolteacher named Helen Briggs taught her students about stars and peace. But in the evenings, she helped decode Vorthan signals using old math textbooks and a homemade antenna array. She found patterns in their fleet movements, routes they repeated, times they rested. She passed the data to Nate through a chain of couriers, each one unaware of the full picture. It was slow but safe, and it worked. The humans were not fighting with fleets. They were fighting with patience, with scraps, with minds sharpened by centuries of survival. They used what they had. Old satellites, fishing boats retrofitted with radar. Even weather balloons launched into low orbit to bounce signals. Nothing fancy. Just smart. Rail grew desperate. He demanded answers from his commanders. "Where are they?" he roared during a private briefing. "How do they strike and vanish?" No one could say. Their spies in human space sent back reports of normal life. Markets open, schools running, farms harvesting. But the military? Gone like smoke. Then came the worst blow. A Vorthan listening post near the Helios Rift picked up a faint signal. It was encrypted, but the source was clear. Earth. The message was short, repeated every 10 minutes. It wasn't a threat. It was a name, Lena Cruz. Over and over. Just her name. No anger, no music. Just those two words spoken by a calm female voice. It spread through the hegemony like a ghost. Crews began refusing night shifts. Pilots checked their sensors twice, then 3 times. Morale dropped. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were haunting them. Eli heard the broadcast on a smuggled earpiece. He closed his eyes. He knew what it meant. The humans weren't seeking revenge. They were making sure no one forgot why this started. Rail, cornered and furious, made his final decision. If the humans would not show themselves, he would drag them into the light. He ordered the full hegemony fleet, over 200 warships, to assemble at the edge of Sol system. Their target, Earth itself. Not to occupy, not to negotiate, to burn the cradle of humanity to ash and end the threat forever. The armada launched under a blood-red sun. It moved fast, confident, unstoppable. But as the lead ships entered jump coordinates near Neptune's orbit, something strange happened. Their drives stuttered. Navigation failed. Space itself seemed to ripple. One by one, the ships dropped out of warp, not in formation but scattered, blind and alone. Waiting in the dark were human corvettes, silent and sharp. And behind them, hidden in the rings of Saturn, the first real human fleet in decades powered up their weapons. The hunt was no longer quiet. It had become a storm. Part 3. The Vorthan fleet never reached Earth. It never even saw the planet. One moment their ships were aligned in perfect formation, engines humming with the power of 100 suns. The next, space itself seemed to twist. Their jump drives screamed, then died. Navigation systems filled with static. Alarms blared across every bridge. High Commander Rail shouted orders, but his voice was lost in the chaos. What they did not know was that the humans had spent weeks laying a trap. Not with mines or missiles, but with something quieter, something smarter. In the void between Neptune and Saturn, hidden inside old ice comets and derelict satellites, the humans had placed dozens of small devices. They looked like space junk, rusty, broken, harmless, but each one contained a quantum resonator, tuned to the exact frequency of Vorthan warp fields. When the fleet jumped in, the resonators fired at once, creating a ripple in local space-time. It was like throwing a stone into a calm pond. The waves didn't destroy the ships, but they knocked them off balance, pulled them out of warp, and left them drifting. And waiting in that darkness were human ships. They came not in a wall of fire, but in silence. Small corvettes, retrofitted freighters, even old lunar tugs with armor plates bolted on. They moved like shadows between the crippled Vorthan cruisers. No comms, no warnings, just sudden bursts of plasma fire. Precise strikes on engine vents, sensor arrays, weapon mounts. The Vorthan ships, designed for open battle, were helpless. Their shields were up, but their blind spots were everywhere. And the humans knew everyone. Mara Finch flew lead in her Corvette, Whisper. She didn't think of herself as a soldier. She thought of wheat fields, of open skies, of the quiet hum of her old crop duster. But now she danced through debris and enemy fire with the same calm focus. She targeted a Vorthan destroyer's coolant line, just like the drones had done weeks before. One shot, a clean hit. The ship shuddered, then went dark. On the ground, in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Kyle Dawson watched the battle unfold on a screen made from spare parts. His tripwire had worked better than anyone hoped. Now his team was sending new commands to the resonators, adjusting the field, tightening the net. "They're not getting out," he muttered, fingers flying over a keyboard held together with duct tape. Back on Luna Command, Nate Brooks stood with his arms crossed, watching the same feed. He didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He simply said, "Let them feel what Theta 7 felt." The battle lasted less than an hour. Of the 200 Vorthan ships that entered the system, only 17 escaped. The rest were disabled, not destroyed. The humans took no prisoners. They didn't need to. They left the survivors adrift, their comms broadcasting one message on loop. "This is what happens when you hurt us." The news spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, species that had mocked humans now fell silent. Trade ships changed course. Diplomats canceled meetings. Even the Concord Council went into emergency session. But Eli Vance, still under soft arrest on Viridia Prime, knew the truth. This was not the end. It was only the beginning of the lesson. In the weeks that followed, the humans did not press their advantage. They did not chase the broken fleet back to Vorthan space. Instead, they vanished again. Their ships powered down. Their signals stopped. But this time, no one believed they were gone, because the attacks kept coming, just not where anyone expected. Vorthan's supply depot orbiting Gallus 4 lost power when its main reactor was flooded with a strange foam that hardened on contact with air. The foam came from canisters dropped by a drone no bigger than a shoebox. The depot's crew survived, but their weapons, food, and fuel were ruined. All that remained on the walls, sprayed in red paint, were 2 words. Remember Theta 7. On the planet Vortha itself, the capital city's communication grid failed for 3 days. Not from a bomb, but from a virus hidden in a fake software update. The update had been disguised as a Concord peace proposal. It spread through every terminal, every console, every public screen. When it activated, it didn't erase data. It played Lena Cruz's final transmission on every device in the city. Over and over. People wept. Others rioted. The government shut down the network, but the damage was done. Fear had taken root. Meanwhile, human engineers worked day and night. In garages, in basements, in school labs. They built new tools from old parts. A fishing sonar became a long-range scanner. A microwave oven powered a signal jammer. A child's toy robot was reprogrammed to crawl into enemy vents and plant trackers. Nothing was wasted. Everything had a purpose. Helen Briggs, the school teacher from Des Moines, now helped coordinate civilian efforts from a hidden bunker in Iowa. She organized supply runs, coded messages in children's storybooks, and taught volunteers how to spot spy drones. She never held a gun. But she was as much a part of the fight as any pilot. The Vorthan hegemony tried to respond. They sent spies to Earth, but the humans were ready. Every stranger was watched. Every package was checked. One spy was caught trying to upload data from a public library terminal. He was turned over to local police, not soldiers, and charged with trespassing. The message was clear. This was not a war between armies. It was a defense of home. Rael, once proud and loud, now spoke in hushed tones. He ordered his people to stay close to core worlds. He banned all travel near human space. But it was too late. The hegemony's economy was crumbling. Trade partners pulled away. Their own citizens demanded peace. And still the humans said nothing. No speeches. No demands. Just quiet, relentless pressure. Eli received a message one night slipped under his door. It was a single sheet of paper with a hand-drawn map of the Sol system. At Earth's location, someone had written, "We're not here to conquer. We're here to make sure no one ever forgets." He folded the paper and hid it in his boot. For the first time in months, he felt hope. Because the galaxy was finally learning the truth. Humans were not the strongest. Not the fastest. Not the most advanced. But when they were wronged, they did not rage. They remembered. And they hunted. Not with hate, but with purpose. And they would not stop until the lesson was learned by all. Part 4. The Vorthan hegemony was breaking apart from the inside. Factories that once built warships now sat empty. Food shipments failed to arrive. Power grids flickered in major cities. Not because humans bombed them, but because the humans had cut the threads that held the hegemony together, one by one. They did not attack armies. They attacked supply lines, data networks, and trust itself. And it was working. High Commander Rael paced the war room in the Capitol Tower, his claws clicking against the floor. His officers stood silent, eyes down. No one dared speak first. The last report had been worse than the one before. A fleet sent to protect a mining colony near the Outer Rim had turned back after half its ships refused orders. The crew said they were tired of dying for a war they never understood. Rael had ordered the captains arrested, but even his own guards hesitated. He knew the truth now. The humans were not fighting to win territory. They were fighting to make sure no one would ever dare strike them again. And they were winning without firing a single shot in open battle. On Earth, life went on. Children went to school. Farmers planted crops. Factories hummed, but not with weapons. They built sensors, drones, and signal relays. Every town had a volunteer team. In Boise, teenagers tested drone swarms in empty parking lots. In Austin, retired engineers helped design new jamming tech using old radio parts. In Portland, Kyle Dawson's team had just finished a new version of the quantum resonator. Smaller, faster, and able to be launched from a modified weather balloon. It wasn't meant to destroy. It was meant to remind. Mara Finch flew low over the Arizona desert in a stolen Vorthan scout ship, one of the few they had captured intact. She wasn't hunting. She was testing. Her team had reprogrammed its AI to mimic Vorthan patrol patterns. If it worked, they could send it deep into enemy space, not to fight, but to listen. To learn. She smiled as the ship responded to her commands. It felt strange, flying something built by the enemy, but it also felt right. Use their tools against them. That was the human way. Back on Luna, Nate Brooks reviewed the latest intel. The hegemony's morale was collapsing. Their allies were pulling away. Even the Keldari, once loud supporters of the strike on Theta 7, now called for peace talks. But Nate knew better than to trust words. He had seen what happened when humans let their guard down, so he kept the pressure steady, not hard, just enough. A small team of civilian divers in the Gulf of Mexico recovered a sunken Vorthan probe that had washed ashore. They handed it over to a Navy lab in Pensacola. Within days, its memory core was cracked open, and its data was used to map enemy patrol routes near the border. No soldiers were involved. Just ordinary people doing what they could. Helen Briggs stood in front of her classroom in Des Moines teaching history. But her lesson that day was different. She spoke about resilience, about how people, when pushed too far, find ways to stand tall. Her students listened quietly. Some of them had parents working on defense projects. Others had lost relatives on Theta 7. They understood more than most adults gave them credit for. That evening, Helen met with a group of teachers in a basement. They were building a new kind of message, not for enemies, but for the galaxy. Using simple math and star charts, they encoded a peaceful signal that could be sent on open frequencies. It showed Earth's location, but also images of farms, schools, hospitals. It said in every language the Concord used, "We do not seek war, but we will not be victims. The signal would be sent soon, but not yet." First, the hegemony had to feel the full weight of their mistake. Rail, desperate, made one last gamble. He ordered a secret mission. A single fast cruiser, stripped of all markings, would slip past human patrols and launch a data bomb at Earth's main communication hub in Geneva. Not to kill, to silence. To cut humanity off from the galaxy once and for all, the ship launched under cover of a solar flare. It moved quietly, its engines dampened, its path hidden among asteroid debris. For 3 days it crept closer to Earth. The crew believed they were unseen, but they were wrong. A fishing trawler off the coast of Maine, fitted with a homemade radar array, picked up an odd blip. The captain, a man named Carl, had been part of the Coastal Watch since the war began. He didn't call the military. He sent a coded message through a network of ham radio operators. Within an hour, the blip's path was traced. Within 2, a team in Colorado Springs had locked onto its signal. By dawn, Mara Finch was in the sky, not in a warship, but in a modified cargo hauler with stealth plating. She found the cruiser near the moon's far side. It never saw her coming. Her ship released a cloud of reflective chaff, made from shredded soda cans and foil, that blinded its sensors. Then, using a tow cable from an old space tug, she latched onto the cruiser's engine housing. A small charge, no bigger than a firecracker, disabled its main thruster. The ship spun helplessly. No shots were fired. No lives were taken. But the cruiser was captured. Its data core was pulled. Its crew handed over to the Concorde as proof of continued aggression. When the news reached Viridia Prime, even Rail's strongest allies turned away. The Concorde Council called an emergency session. This time, Eli Vance was invited to speak. He stood before them, not in chains, but in a simple gray suit. He did not shout. He did not gloat. He simply said, "You were warned. We did not want this. But we will not forget." The room was silent. For the first time, the galaxy saw humans not as primitives but as protectors of their own. And everyone understood, attack them and you would not face an army. You would face every man, woman, and child who called Earth home. And they would hunt you, not with rage, but with quiet, endless resolve. Part 5. The Vorthon hegemony sent a message of surrender. It came not through military channels, but through a civilian freighter that drifted into neutral space with its engines off and its comms open. The ship carried no weapons, only a data crystal wrapped in a white cloth, a sign of peace used by many species. On the crystal was a simple request: talk. The Concord Council, shaken and humbled, agreed to host the meeting. But they did not invite generals or admirals. They asked Earth to send someone who spoke for the people, not the fleet. And Earth chose Helen Briggs. She arrived on Viridia Prime alone. No guards, no entourage. Just a woman in a plain blue dress carrying a small satchel and a voice that had taught children how to read. The delegates watched her walk into the great chamber with disbelief. This was the face of the species that had broken the hegemony without firing a full-scale war. She looked like a librarian, not a warrior. Helen stood at the center of the room. She did not raise her voice. She did not point fingers. She simply spoke. "We did not want this," she said. "We never wanted war. We only wanted to live, to work, to raise our children in peace. When you attacked Theta 7, you did not strike a base. You struck people. A geologist who loved rocks. A cook who made soup for night shift. A young man who called his mother every week. They are gone, and we will not forget them." She paused. The room was so quiet that the hum of the air filter sounded loud. "But we are not here for revenge," she continued. "We are here to say this. Do not mistake our kindness for weakness. Do not think our silence means fear. We will trade with you. We will talk with you. But if you hurt us again, we will respond. Not with hate, not with cruelty, but with everything we have. And we will not stop until it is over." High Commander Rail sat at the far end of the table. His armor was dull now, his posture slumped. He did not argue. He did not defend. He simply nodded once, a small motion that meant more than any speech. The Concord passed a new resolution that day. It was short but clear. Any act of violence against human space would be treated as a threat to all member worlds. Patrols would be monitored. Borders would be respected. And the memory of Theta 7 would be recorded in every training archive, not as a battle but as a warning. Eli Vance watched from the back of the chamber. His house arrest had been lifted. His voice, once ignored, was now listened to. He felt no joy, only relief. The lesson had been learned, but at a terrible cost. After the meeting, Helen walked with Eli through the gardens of Viridia Prime. The twin suns cast long shadows over flowering vines and quiet fountains. For a while they said nothing. "Do you think they really understand?" Helen asked at last. Eli looked at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. "They understand enough," he said. "Fear is a teacher. But respect takes time. We gave them both." Back on Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The blackout dead. Ships powered up their transponders. Markets buzzed with news and laughter. But things were different now. People looked at the sky not with wonder alone, but with quiet pride. They had stood together. They had protected their own. And they had done it not by becoming monsters, but by staying human. Mara Finch returned to Nebraska. She stood in the middle of her family's wheat field, boots covered in dust, and breathed in the smell of earth and rain. She missed the stars sometimes, but she knew she could go back if needed. For now, home was enough. Kyle Dawson's garage lab became a school. He taught kids how to build radios, fix drones, and think like engineers. He told them, "You don't need fancy tools to change the world, you just need to care enough to try." Nate Brooks stepped down from command. He moved to a small house near the coast where he fished and read old books. But every morning he checked the sky, not out of fear, but habit. The silence now was peaceful, not tense. The captured Vorthen cruiser was returned, not as a trophy, but as a gesture. Its crew was released. No trials, no punishment. Just a message: we are better than this. And across the galaxy, a new phrase began to spread. It was whispered in command decks, written in training manuals, taught to young cadets. Do not attack the humans. They will hunt you relentlessly. It was not said with anger. It was said with respect. Because the humans had proven something the galaxy had forgotten. Strength is not just in weapons or numbers. It is in unity, in memory, in the quiet will of ordinary people who refuse to be broken. And so peace returned, not because the humans won a war, but because they showed what they were willing to lose to keep it. The stars watched, and for the first time, they saw Earth not as a small blue dot, but as a home worth protecting.